Let's take a look at the Mixer Brush tool, which is also docked under the Brush in your Tools panel. It's the bottom one, Mixer Brush tool. This is a destructive tool, meaning it will make the changes directly to that layer. So let's duplicate the image that you've got, Command J, so it's on its own layer, and that way we can go back to our original. Let's take a look at the top settings here. We have the color that you'll be painting with, which usually is set up to match your foreground color down here. You have some options if you click on the little arrow of loading brush and clean brush, and we'll take a look at those in a second. And then we have some settings that we can click on or off to do a few different things. And if you want to know exactly how those work, you can hover over it for a second and see the description. So this one says it will load the brush after each brush stroke, and the next one says that it will clean the brush after each brush stroke. Then we've got some drop downs where you can set it to try and imitate some real life type materials. What it's talking about is a wet light mix, maybe oil colors. Oil colors? Oil paints, there we go. And then some different settings that you can play with to affect how heavy or how light the effect is. And then if you want to enable airbrush style to kind of build up the effect, you can do that too. Let's just take a look at this kind of quickly, and then you can play around with it to see what all the different settings are. So if you click out on your panel somewhere and drag and draw, you'll notice that it's gathering the colors from around it and trying to blend them together. Now if you're using a really large brush, this may be kind of slow. I would recommend making your brush a little bit smaller. And if you zoom in a little bit, you can approach this like you were trying to give it more of a painterly look. And I know this is a little difficult to do with a mouse, but I'm using a tablet, so it's a little bit easier. And it's just pulling in colors from around to make it look sort of blended and strokey and kind of fun. If we change some of these settings up here, let's see, let's set it so that it will, I think this one was what, load color each time? Load the brush after each stroke. That color should kind of accumulate and drag on to other areas of the book. So for example, if I go from this yellow one to this blue one, you'll see when I first clicked there was still a little bit of that yellow color left, and moving on to the red one there's a little bit of blue. So that's what loading the brush does. It's like it was a physical brush and you've dipped it in paint without rinsing it off in between, which logically leads to our next setting, which essentially would clean it off in between. So if I turn that first one off and turn the next one on, I shouldn't get that effect. When I click and drag on the yellow, there we go. When I click on drag on the blue, there's none of that left over from the previous bit. Now, the load your brush option is really just trying to imitate real life brushes, and same with all the other settings that are there in your control panel. You can play with this, really have some fun with it, see what it can do. What it's trying to imitate is a program called Corel Painter, which to date is the most successful at imitating real life mediums such as watercolors and oils and pastels. If you have access to that program, I would highly recommend checking it out. The interface is quite a bit different than Photoshop, so it's a little bit of a brain curve if Photoshop's what you're coming from. But if you're really looking for something painterly, I would say go there. In the meantime, this is a fun tool to play with and just kind of see what its limits and its capabilities is.